I'm going to work and explain the situation in Ukraine at the same time. This is a world first. See, this is to prove that man can double task. Right, anyway, this Russia-Ukraine situation, right? I'm on the side of Russia on this because every time the Russians are made out to be the baddie, yet it isn't them that's being the baddie at all. Most of the time, it's actually been the United States of America which has been the aggressor towards Russia. Now, cast your mind back to just before COVID when the Americans, through NATO, were positioning missile bases on the border of Ukraine aimed over Russia's airspace. Now, remember the warning that Vladimir Putin gave to America and said, you need to move this back, otherwise we're going to see it as a confrontation. Well, they didn't heed this warning. Basically, what we have here is, imagine this, right? I live at 17 Apricot Road, and my worst neighbour in the world, this neighbour, is just, keeps threatening and intimidating me, but the peacekeeper has been number 15, yeah, because he gets them of both sides. He's the neutral ground. We both go and have a cup of coffee with him and talk with him, and we maybe exchange information, everything else between each other, between that person. Now what we have here is that number 13 wants to encroach more on number 15 and show me more aggression by putting more BB guns and everything else aimed across number 13 or 15 straight into my garden, right? So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to put my Nerf guns and everything up firing straight across number 13. I'm going to get ready and I'm going to warn number 13 and say, listen, if you don't back off, I'm going to consider it as an attack. Move your Nerf guns, move your BB guns back onto your property and don't encroach on a neutral ground. It's neutral ground, right? And that is what Russia has said. Russia has said, pull back your forces, NATO, because we see this as an act of aggression. It is, because Ukraine is neutral ground. And now what we have is the West is arming Ukraine with defence systems against Russia. That isn't a sign of peace, is it? No, that is a sign of the West getting involved again. Now, why are the West getting involved? The reason being is because COVID has run its course. They don't know the best exit strategy for COVID, and a good old war is a good way of getting around this and distracting people and making people forget about COVID, isn't it? Because the threat of a Cold War again, anyone that lived during the 80s and 90s, and at school we're hearing the old, what we was told, it's the flood sirens. No, it wasn't. It was actually a nuclear bomb sirens that were going off every 3 months. They used to test it. Anyone that remembers what it was like living in a Cold War remembers what the scene was with America and Russia, and pretty much the UK being in the middle. Yeah, we had Tu-23 Bears flying over the UK, Russian aircraft, English aircraft, scrambling every 5 minutes because Russia was pushing the boundaries, and Russia's been doing it again. But the world has been warned, and I am fully with Russia on this. The Western Europe, you need to pull back your forces, because if you don't, I'm fully with Russia on this. It's an act of aggression, and people need to look at this. Vladimir Putin is not the baddie. You need to have a look at what America's been doing, and I'll tell you something now. If Trump had still been in power, you wouldn't have none of this problem, because Trump was a talker, he was a negotiator, and he talked business. Joe Biden is a wet blanket. But seriously, look at the history between Russia and America, right? And look at the stuff that's coming out, because America has been pretty bad towards Russia, and this is what this is all about. This is the exit strategy out of COVID. Another distraction, loads more money, because what does war do? It generates money, doesn't it, for the arms and companies, everything else. And that is the true story behind this, and that is what's going on. Ignore what the media say. They're trying to gaslight it. They've always been anti-Russia. Take a good hard look at Russia. Take a look at what Putin has done for Russia. Since the Soviet Union collapsed and its economy was worth nothing at all, he's slowly rebuilt that country. He's actually turned Russia into a superpower, and without a strong military presence. That's quite an incredible thing to do. I actually have a lot of respect for Putin. And I'll say that now because I see Russia as being painted in a bad, negative light all the time, and it isn't the case. I would actually have rather a Russian Prime Minister than Boris Johnson and even Sanchez here in Spain. I'd rather Putin. And this all goes back to what I was saying about watch what happens now with the world powers. There is going to be a division of power between America, Russia and China. They want to split the world into three superpowers. And you watch what will happen. It's coming this way and it's going to happen. I'm going to continue now with this because I've been talking for too long.